I would leave you. I would leave you with this. I did respect what you said, Ms. Abrams, in regards to your legislative and how much previous legislators did get accomplished. But here's the thing. I believe our African American legislators do get a lot of things accomplished, but we also need to also provide them with the political cover that is necessary. Mm-hmm. It's more than just us going to the Capitol, but it's also you all lobbying with us, and also because the thing about it is when we talk about the message comes from the top of the party, and so therefore, if the message at the top of the party is not carrying the message that we believe in, then we have to also go to task about that. And so it is a combination of honoring exactly what our forefathers did in the legislature, but it's also a new reality in the legislature, and we have to maneuver to get just a few things that we have accomplished. Number two, though, it starts with an agenda, and that's also a part of what you all have to do. We have to be involved in the agenda setting. We can't just say, well, the legislative black caucus has to set the agenda. We have to be involved in a part of that, because that's important, because that corresponds into actually how we get you all engaged. If there's nothing on the agenda that serves your purposes, then why would you be engaged? And so I'm going to challenge you. I'll leave you with this challenge that it is time to get involved. It is time to get committed, but it's also time for us to move forward. Move forward. Respecting what we did in the past, but moving forward because it's a new day. And so I'll leave you with that.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you all for having me.
It's not very often we take a question, but I overheard the audience member, Representative Love, say, how do you do that? And I think tactically and strategy-wise, that's something we need to focus on. So with that, we've got 15 minutes. Ms. Abrams, if you would, the last question we were focused on, and then we'll move to questions from the audience. What can we do to remove distrust among the races in our state? And then we'll address questions from the audience for the next 15 minutes and close out with closing statements.
The greatest ambassadors for human relations in the democratic process is that you don't come and then go back home if you don't win. When I went through just a few of these, and I saw how many people who have had the experience of running for public office, the ones that were the most successful are the ones who moved on. But the worst human capital loss was for those who, once they're not winning or they're not in office, they don't come help anybody else to get in office. And I just want to commend you for having been there many, many years, but you had come through. You've been there as a representative at the quorum courts and those kinds of things. We have got to go be present at school board elections. We've got to go to the school board after the election. We've got to get people elected in the quorum court, then go back and be present and hold them accountable. We're not holding anybody accountable until the next election, and we just don't give them no money or don't vote for them. But we cannot afford as black people to lose people who have gained that much information. The number of people who are in the white community, they gain information and they use that information to move to the next level and the next level and the next level. They don't just jump out there and start flying 5,000 miles at the first time they come on the scene. It's an educational process. The last thing about the preachers, and I want to so nobody don't tell a preacher I talked about it, right, is that we have fought too hard for public housing. We have voted for all the job opportunities, and when affirmative action came, we got scattered. We don't live in that same paradigm that we had. So most black churches do not have anybody who belong to that particular house of worship within 7 blocks. They have satellite memberships. The old minister had people who were of that community where he was living and preaching and serving. So we have to now learn a whole new paradigm of how to deal with a mega church and nobody lives within a mile of the church. We have to have auxiliaries within the church that are about voter education on the issues. They're the ones who go back and lobby with the legislators. And so we don't have paid lobbyists. But when we got term limit, what happened to us, the ones who had been there under seniority system 22 years, they had mastered the system. And when they could no longer run, they became a lobbyist. And they became lobbyists for companies that pay them to be their lobbyists, to fight for their issues. We don't have but 3 people who are licensed to be lobbyists in the legislature. And they're not paid to be lobbyists for the issues that most affect us as African Americans. They are lobbyists for the Farm Bureau. We're not even on the farm anymore. They're lobbyists for the electric company. They're lobbyists for Blue Cross Blue Shield. They are not in contact with us. So we have to become our own lobbyists as fraternities, as social clubs. You got to do the lobbying now that you used to have people who had been there 20 years and understood the system and had built a fraternal relationship with the other legislators. That's how I see our new challenge, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you so much. At this time, we're going to take questions from the audience, and I ask if you please would stand when you address the panel with your question. Are there any questions of our audience members? Gentleman in the very far back, please.
Yeah, I promise I won't speak, but I do want the panelists, particularly the young man here,
Gary Moody.
The issue about African Americans being elected to a statewide office in Arkansas, notwithstanding the population figures of African Americans, I direct your attention to our surrounding states, Mississippi, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Louisiana in particular, Alabama, and they've successfully elected a number of African Americans to the Congress. Please address that if I make my question clear.
We have that question. I'm wondering if you knew this. It says here, what makes Arkansas different from Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, related to the ability to elect African Americans to a congressional seat? Mr. Moody.
Let me just add on. The matter of race relations is not, don't put the burden on African Americans, make it a two-way street.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah, as I was saying, I think that those other surrounding southern states are various years almost ahead of us when it comes to their political evolution, if you will. Now, the good thing is, like I was trying to get to earlier, is I think we can really learn a lot by skipping ahead, so to speak. Look at the states that have done a particularly good job. Georgia's done a particularly good job, for example, in the South. And see what they've done and model that here, as opposed to waiting for, I guess, the natural, political shift to occur. Dr. Barth might be able to speak to that more as a scholar than I can, but that's what I would do as a political strategist. Is I would look to see how have other folks managed to win as African American candidates in the South, and is there something inherently different? Is there something in the water here that would prevent us from replicating that strategy? I don't know that there is, other than doing it.
Well, I do think there's a challenge here because of, and it goes back to my opening comments about just about where folks are situated, the geography of it, and that I do think there is some division between the urban communities in Pulaski County and rural communities, primarily in the Delta, that creates a cleavage, a divide between the still fairly small percentage of African Americans that exist here. And I think that's a challenge, so that there is, as we all know, there is not one African American community in Arkansas, right? There are varied ones, and in particular, you have that big divide between the urban community and rural communities, and I do think that's different than in some other states. So I think there are some challenges here that are different and more clear than in some of those other states that do have larger, slightly more cohesive African American populations.
The gentleman just next to you.
Yeah.
Well, my question will be similar to the one that I asked earlier, and that is concerning the Democratic Party and the Black Caucus within the Democratic Party. Now, I know we have the Black Caucus. We have drifted away from our original position, and our original position was that we were supposed to look among ourselves and find out, the best qualified candidate, and then promote those candidates to the Democratic Party. But that's not happening now. I see, but most of what I see here, and I saw here today too, is that the Black Caucus was promote, and this had nothing to do with degrading our white brothers and sisters. But I saw them caucusing among themselves, promoting white candidates. So now I want to know, and my question haven't been answered, what is the position as far as the Democratic Black Caucus?
Ms. Abrams?
Yes, I was watching you and I heard your nomination and I heard my nomination. I'm committed to diversity, but I also know there's another element of we used to call it the good old boy system. Yeah. Now we have the people who got a right to vote in 1922 called women. They now are practicing what the good old boys used to do. They see about each other. And we are left out there that we can't hardly get an African American who's a card-carrying member in this caucus to be brave enough to nominate another African American to be a candidate among the others. And I counted the votes that we could have had to get at least one. But I'm embarrassed that the Democratic Party can have this kind of election and we end up with all white slates. That's a reflection on us. We know we have a responsibility, don't let it happen, but they have responsibilities. And that's what I've said when I'm in the Women's Federated Group. We can't have an all-white women's offices. We just can't have that. And you just want us to be members. Now, you all know me. I don't be anybody's elected official that if I'm gonna only be the chaplain and sing the national anthem and pray. I don't pray in the Democratic Party because if my prayers had been answered, we'd already be straight bumped. So I'm just saying we accept some things and then we might not understand how it happened. When you are not supportive of the principles of why we have a Democratic Black Caucus, if you're not committed or understand why we had some women, it's because women were not being elected. White men were the only ones being elected. Go back and look at the history of the Democratic Party. Jimmy Lou and Judy Jones, they don't let women come through white at the top level. And same thing, what happened to Blanche? White men didn't vote for her. We white women and black women, we voted for her, but the men didn't. Why? Because she had not been fighting for women issues. She was fighting for corporate issues. And so the corporate issue, they had something about it better, and we ended up in losing a seat for the Arkansas on the agriculture committee that we needed badly because we're an agricultural state. So sometimes we don't understand. We began to play the same game that the white men used to play. Geographical, as you said, Bart. All Pulaski County was satisfied today to not let anybody in but just Pulaski County of the 4 positions. And yet there are 6 counties. So we got to open up.
2 questions remaining. We'll take the young lady right here, and the missus in the back, you'll be our final question.
I have
First,
had
right
one
here.
hand.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. We'll start here. We'll take 3. We'll start with you first. Would you please stand? Yes, ma'am.
Starting with me.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But point of order, I would like to hear from some of the other panelists on my the question that I asked.
If you could
Black
see the
Caucus.
panelists after our discussion, for the sake of time, unfortunately, we will not be able to address your question by each panelist. But if you'd like for any individual panelist to answer your question, we'd be happy to, I'm certain.